Every language is a different way of living life. That is a very powerful statement.
Every language is a different way of living. Every language is a different way of being, a different way of doing life.
Hi, I'm Mickelle Weber, founder of House of Peregrine. This show is for life abroad and those crafting their life story with intention. I bring you conversations about international finances, meaning-making, relationships, and parenting. I bring on the experts that help you on your journey so that you can connect more deeply with yourself, the people around you, and the place you currently call home. Find out more at houseofperegrine.com, where you can find exclusive guides, products, software, and a community that's waiting to welcome you. Welcome to House of Peregrine.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the House of Peregrine podcast. My guest today is Maria Potvin, founder of Growing Up Multilingual. Most people know her as Mimi. Mimi is a linguist and multilingual specialist who works with families and communities navigating life across languages and cultures. She studied linguistics, applied linguistics, and multilingual education across LMU Munich, CELTA, and Oxford Brookes. She's also living this in real time as a mom raising two multilingual kids. What I love about Mimi is that she doesn't talk about multilingualism like it's a shiny achievement or some perfect expat family badge. She brings the research, indeed, but she also brings the emotional reality, the grief sometimes parents feel when a child answers back in a community language that's unexpected, the presence of being the only one holding a home language, the tenderness of wanting your child to feel connected to grandparents but also to their current community, and to be part of themselves they can't fully name yet. If you've ever moved countries, you know this isn't about speaking the language. It's also about identity and belonging. It's about what gets carried forward from home and what quietly starts to slip away when life gets busy in a new country and a new dominant language takes over, when your identity or the identity of your loved one starts to shift. In this conversation, we explore what it really takes to raise confident, multilingual children or be in a multilingual household without turning your home into a classroom or a war zone. We talk about why home languages get lost, what that can cost over time, and how language becomes a bridge, not just to communication, but to connection with family, with culture, with the country you find yourself in, and with self. If you're raising kids abroad, partnered across cultures, or thinking about leaving your home country, or simply curious about how language shapes who we become, take a listen. This episode is for you. Welcome, Mimi. I'm so excited to have you on today.
I'm very excited to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Please tell us what you are up to with Growing Up Multilingual.
What I am very passionate about simplifying the journey of raising multilingual children by bringing research and science together with everyday family life and making it as easy as possible for people to raise confident multilingual children.
What is the thing that you see? I want to ask you about what makes you passionate about this eventually, but what is the number one lie you think people tell themselves or hear about having kids that speak multiple languages?
One of the biggest things that I hear and that people kind of slip into believing is that it's just going to happen, that it's just somehow going to work out on its own. And then people wake up one day and their kids are older, and then they look back and then they are surprised. How come their children, can have a basic conversation or with their family, extended family, or how come their children are drifting away from their culture, from their language? And I see this also as the biggest setback. I wouldn't call it a failure, but a biggest loss is that when the children get detached from their languages and culture.
Yeah. And that is what I want. I think you're approaching this from a very interesting. When I hear things about multilingual kids, it's all about how to get them into language, how to support them in the language they need to learn for the country they're in. But you are actually talking about language holistically in the life of a person or a child, which includes the language of their parents or their country they've come from, heritage language, I don't know the right word. And that is a huge part of the story as well. And so I've told the story on this podcast many times that when we moved to the Netherlands, we put our kids in Dutch school. And this gentleman, the teacher, came out to me one day after a few months and said to me, "Ma'am, your son doesn't speak Dutch at school." And I said, I'm sorry, but he didn't ask to learn Dutch. And the teacher, to his credit, just said, oh, you're right. But, and so that's one part of it, is that the language learning sometimes is most heavily felt by the children. But then there's the other part, which you're speaking to so beautifully, which is what if your language is being lost, the language of your heritage? And so I love how you're bringing this lens to the full experience of language in the human life and children. And so that is that, when did that research start for you? And then when did it meet real life, or were they at the same time?
Oh gosh, for me, this started really early, and I wasn't even aware of this because it was in the last few years that I realized this work kind of chose me and I didn't choose it myself, not intentionally, because I grew up with my grandparents, and my grandfather he was a peregrine himself, if you want, a wanderer. He left, so I was born and raised in Bulgaria, and he left Bulgaria when he was 2, and so that was in 1913, I think, and went to the Ukraine, and he lived there with his family, learned Russian, went to university there, and then they came back to Bulgaria. And I grew up with them, and he taught me how to read, and he taught me how that you can say things differently, the same things differently in a different language. So I would read in Russian because it's the same Cyrillic script, and he would translate it for me. And I was absolutely baffled and speechless that you can say the same things using different words. And this is when it started, kind of. This is where when he planted the seed, and then it went throughout my life. And I was exposed to English also from a very early age because both my aunt and uncle are English professors, and they lived in the same very big house. So we always had English speakers coming. And for me, this was incredible. I'm getting goosebumps just talking about it. It was incredible because it showed me that there is so much more out there than what I knew. And this opened up my curiosity about different languages and different cultures. And this proved to be very, very useful, life changing throughout my life.
Yeah. And so growing up in literally a multicultural home where languages are being played like music throughout your house. That's what it sounds like to me.
Yeah, absolutely. This is what it was. This is what it was. And it sort of gave me the bug to explore and to look for what's beyond the words and what's beyond what's being said, because every language is a different way of living. Every language is a different way of being, a different way of doing life. And this is something that's been, one of the main driving forces for me to get into this work.
Wow, you just gave me goosebumps. Every language is a different way of living life. That is a very powerful statement. And I don't think that people actually realize that a translation is just that, a translation. It's not a transmission.
Yes, yes,
That's so beautiful.
absolutely.
What did you notice? What did you notice? How did you notice that? So this might surprise a lot of people, right? Because now the world's so connected because you can translate a language and you can understand what someone's saying. But I think those that learn a language from childhood actually learn it through the resonance of looking beyond the words in a way. Is that true? Like when you're learning it as a child, when you learn a language as an adult, you're learning vocabulary, you're learning this.
It's more
But
conscious. Yeah.
yeah, but with children, it's more, at least this is what I've noticed. I'm not multilingual. I'm so jealous. I'm so happy that my children are. That was one of my goals for them. But they describe now learning languages, now that they're older, because they're teenagers, as hard. They're like, oh, this is not fun. This is not hard. This is like, I learned it like water. It was coming in and out of my body. And like, it's a very different experience.
When they're younger, it's a more unconscious process. It's a more playful process, in a way, because you don't have to consciously think about the fact that, okay, I'm learning now a new language, I'm learning a new word, because you learn through play. And this is the best way for children to learn or to acquire a language, because they're acquiring, they're not consciously learning it like we do at school. Because as you said so lovely in the intro, at home, it's not a classroom. Parents are not teachers when they pass on a language to their children. And I worked with families, and I was asked, like, this is one of the most interesting and eye-opening question for me. When we're passing on a language and when we're doing all this language work, would my child have time for free play? And I'd never seen it from this perspective, because for me, language and play, they're always connected. It's always the same. And it made me look at it from a different way and realize that people do make this very strong distinction sometimes. And it's not, because children learn best through play. And
Do
this
you
is
think
how their mind.
do you think it might be everybody learns better through play? I always wonder this.
Yeah, I think adults, we're taught to learn how to unlearn playing, right? As we grow up, we need to unlearn this and be serious and be more adults. And
Yeah,
now,
sit in a classroom, learn vocabulary, have structure. But the people that have learned the languages best as adults always say they learn it from a lover or a partner.
yeah, because there is a connection there, right? This language is emotion, and language, when you have this motivation to learn it for something special, like a partner, somebody that's very close to your heart, or a very dear friend, there is a lot more to it. There is a lot more emotion behind it. There is a lot more motivation,
Just
because
more surface area. There's just more surface area. And I wonder, that's what makes me wonder. So people always say this, and you and I spoke about this a little bit briefly, is that children learn languages so quickly. They just pick them up, which is just not necessarily true. And it wasn't true for
yeah,
my journey. My son did not like learning Dutch. He speaks it very well now, but he did not want to. He did not have the desire. He did not have the surface area. Like he just we plopped him in a school because everyone told us kids will pick it up. It'll be fine. But I
yeah.
wonder now, and of course that's both terrible advice, and I don't know how else I would have done it, without a tutor and stuff when he's 5. But I just wonder that often, is that if everybody learns better through play.
About this point that you made before, that there is this misconception circulating, that children are like sponges. I've been told this so many times as well, because my kids are also in Dutch school, and they started with varying levels of Dutch, but very little Dutch, both of them. And everybody was telling me, they're kids, it's going to be fine. It's not like that. It's not like that at all. And you basically negate the child as a personality when you say things like this. You negate the individual differences that children have. The ways that children learn. Some children enjoy it, others not so much. Some children are super fast and don't care if they talk and make mistakes. Other children are very different. A lot of children would retreat and be quiet for a while before they start talking. But those are all personality traits, and it depends on so many factors. And to say that a child would just pick it up, I find it's a gross understatement and an oversimplification of a very complex process, because children would acquire a language truly effortlessly within the first year of life. After that, the process starts to change, and it's different for every child, very individual.
Yeah. And at 5 or 3 or 1, like my kids were, they did not have, like, I just really want to learn Dutch. Like there was no.
Yeah,
And so then it became about survival. That's what they'll say now. Like we just had to,
absolutely.
which is not,
Yeah,
again, they will learn it. They did. And so what they're saying is true. They will pick it up, but it's not a delightful process always. It can be grueling, it can be lonely, it can cause trauma. And
it can
that,
be very lonely.
yeah.
Yes, absolutely. And it can be very traumatic as well. So we need to also be very vigilant and pay attention to how our children are doing, because things like this can come out in different ways. Feelings about feeling misunderstood, not being able to express yourself, not feeling that you belong, they can come out in different ways of misbehaving and being labeled the difficult child and whatnot. And there is always a reason for this. There is always a cause for this. And sometimes we're very quick to blame and say, okay, you need to drop everything else. You need to focus on Dutch and you need to push, push, push. But it's not, because it doesn't bring results like this without going back to the cause and see what it is that's causing him to feel like this or her.
Yep. Yeah, and for us, again, it's what I learned, and I think what you're teaching people is you need to increase the surface area for them to understand why they're doing this, if that's what you're
Yes.
asking them to do. And recognizing you are asking them to do that. It's something you're asking them to do for your family or for whatever, is they are on the front lines often of this language learning, especially in the Netherlands, maybe not in other countries, if you speak English, of course. But the amount of context that we gave our kids to be like, okay, every single day going into the fire, right?
Yeah.
Thank you for doing this. We can always discover if you want to go to an international school, but we didn't know that for probably 3 years till COVID. And so that was, well, more than that. So maybe 8 years, 5 years. I can't remember now, time has warped. But so I would like for you to tell us, and then I want to move on to the other part of your very interesting work. Tell us, what's a realistic things you can do or parents can do if they've made this choice to put their kids in a school, whether they're younger or older teenagers, it doesn't matter. What are some of the ways that we can make that less traumatic if that's what we need to do or want to do?
The first and foremost thing is talking to your children, something that you said you did a lot. And this is something that some people forget to do, or because it's so stressful when you move to a different country and you decide to put your child in a school in the local language. First of all, you need to think about, are you going to stay in this country longer term or not? Because you will, if you put your child in a school in a different language, their academic language skills, because we need to differentiate between communicative language skills and academic language skills. And the communicative language skills, they build fairly quickly within year, 2 years, depending on the child. And sometimes this can mask the fact that the child is struggling academically because their academic language skills are taking longer to build. They usually take between 3 and 8 years, to be able to express themselves in an academic way, to compare and contrast, and all those things that children need to do as they progress in school as well. And if you're only planning to stay in a country for 2-3 years, it is really highly advisable to continue educating your child in the same language that they were educated before, or have a plan that's more sustainable long term, because putting them in a school in a different language for 2-3 years, then moving in a different, it's just not, it's going to be really traumatic for your child, and it's going to really interfere with their academic development.
Yeah. And
And
interfere is a really good word. So you can do it, but it's going to interfere. I love that word, interfere, with their progress, how they see themselves, how they
it's going to
measure up
hinder.
against their
Yeah.
peers. Yeah. So if you take them for 2 years to the Netherlands, 2 years to Tokyo, and 2 years back to the US, expect that they are academically going to be behind, even though they may have picked up or heard these languages. They're not picking them up academically, and also they're using their academic time differently
Yes,
than their
because
peers.
when
Yeah.
a child starts school in a new language, they have to wear 2 backpacks of sorts, because they're learning the language and then they're learning the content through that language. And they might be super smart. And this is the case for a lot of children. They know so much in their home language, in the language that they were educated before, or in the language they speak at home. Perhaps that was the same language, but they cannot express it. And this is also very traumatic for them. And as you said, interferes with, how they see themselves within the group, within their peers. And this is so very important, the social aspect of it,
Yeah.
the academic is one and the social is a whole different thing.
Yeah. And that's just something, it sounds obvious, but you do not think of it when everyone's like, "Oh, they'll pick it up." That's the advice. That's the advice pretty
Yeah,
much
no.
across the board is
Yeah, no.
their kids, they'll pick it up. It's no big deal, especially if they're small. Their language centers are still open. This is all like potentially true, but just not the whole story.
No. And yes, younger children, they do learn differently than older children. And yes, they're more receptive, but they also tend to forget more quickly compared to older children. My son was born in Germany because I lived in Germany for 20 years before moving here. And he was 3.5 when we moved to the Netherlands. He was going to German daycare 5 days a week, and his German was very decent for he was learning it through the environment and through daycare. And when we moved here, I decided that we need to focus on Dutch because we knew we're going to be staying longer term. And we completely dropped the German. Within a year, it was almost gone.
And that's maybe it's living in his brain somewhere, but that's the difference also is like, do you want your children to hear languages or do you want them to learn languages? And that for me was a big moment of distinction when I moved here, I thought, we'll move here for a year and then my children will learn a new language. And that, of course, at the time, this was 10 years ago, that was kind of going around. But that's when it set in then we stayed 2 years, then we decided to stay longer, was learning a language and what you experienced growing up, hearing all these languages. That was what I actually wanted, was that perspective for them to know that life is lived through different lenses. That's what I actually wanted for them. That was the actual wish. Then there's another wish of them being multilingual, which is a different wish. And that was what I realized is that they already have the outsider's perspective now after a year or two. That's a little bit of trauma actually, but then learning language is a whole other thing. And so that's something I want people to consider when they're thinking about this is language learning is actually has to become, and not in a way of a classroom where people are like, oh, it has to become a priority in your family. It's more like you have to make decisions like which language to let go of and how you spend your time and how you
Absolutely.
spend your emotional conversations with your kids. We talk a lot about language because it is hard and that's what they're doing right now. And so that it's more than it has to be your priority like, oh, you have to become a tutor. That's not it. It's like it really does become part of your family life to have multiple languages and the experience of that. So now I want to talk to you about this other part, which is so vast and so beautiful. And I love that you're talking about it, which is when your home language may start to disappear. Let's dive into that a little bit. Tell me your story around that. And then I know this is present for a lot of international people, not being able to communicate with grandparents, all this sort of thing.
You mean my personal story
Yeah,
with
you
my
can start
children?
there. Yeah, you can start
Yeah.
there if you'd like. And then, yeah.
Well, I left Bulgaria when I finished high school, and I always knew I wanted to see different things. I had a very, very difficult teenage period, very, very difficult because there was a lot of issues in my family, and I survived. I only realized this recently because I've been doing a lot of thinking about my life and my journey. I survived because of language. Because my grandfather had planted this seed, and I had so many pen pals in high school from all over the world, literally Brazil, Japan, Papua New Guinea, anywhere. Because for me, this was my lifeline
Yeah.
to know that they were and kids my age, and they were telling me about their lives. And for me, this was incredible because it helped me hold on. Um,
For those who don't know, I just want to for those who may not know or younger listeners, a pen pal
yes,
back in the
sorry.
day before the internet, a pen pal was someone that you may never have met, but you wrote to them and sent letters back and forth. And it's such an excruciatingly beautiful concept. But having a pen pal is tell us, how did you like that was like magic. I remember having
It
pen pals.
was.
Yeah.
It was. It started. I don't even remember how I started this whole
I don't
thing.
either. That's what I was going to ask you. How did you get to have a pen pal? How did that
The
manifest in your life?
the first two girls I started writing with, they were in Helsinki in Finland, and one of them, because I loved rap music and I played basketball, and back in the day, we didn't really have much access because Bulgaria was in this transition phase from communism into the real world, let's say. So she would send me cool magazines and cool tapes. Okay, for those who don't know, tapes.
Tapes. Now we have to explain tapes. All right, let's do it. We're going to do it. We're going to do it for the people. What was a tape? A mixtape is what I called it.
This was a means, a way to listen to music. That was before CDs, maybe some
Before
kids, some people.
Spotify, before
Spotify, before Apple Music and all that. But after the records. So we're not that old. But yeah, she used to send me all kinds of cool stuff that was not available. And somehow through those girls, I got addresses to other kids. And then I just reached out, sent letters, and then they sent letters back. And they sent me cards from where they live. And they wrote me stories about their lives. And so did I. And it was incredible. And this really, really bridged those 5, 6 years for me when I had to grow up very early and be an adult at 14 years old. So this really showed me that the world is so much bigger than what I have. And there's so many windows that you can look through and explore, and so many different ways of doing life. And this was so incredible for me. So I knew that I couldn't stay there and go to university there. I knew I would leave once I finished high school. And I ended up going to Germany because this was the only opportunity for me to be able to study and work and support myself financially fully. I didn't want to go because I didn't like the language. It didn't sound as melodic as English, but I went and I spent 20 years there. And it's truly the other half of my heart right now because I grew up there. I was 18 when I went. And yeah, so this has been a running theme through my life.
And so when you were growing up, you spoke which language at home? I know you had a lot going through, but what's your mother tongue?
I only spoke Bulgarian. I went to school in Bulgarian. My parents were Bulgarian. That was a truly monolingual household. I had a bit of Russian with my grandfather. Then I had English and German because I went to an English language high school that we had 20 hours of English and we had various subjects in English as well, geography, history, and so on. And it was magic. It was, for me, this was incredible and so interesting. And I was devouring it all because for me, that was a window. I keep repeating myself, but that was truly what it was. And it was a lifeline as well. And I studied linguistics when I went to Germany. I studied English linguistics and applied linguistics. And one of my focus points was second language acquisition as well. And because I've been very passionate about this ever since I can remember.
Yeah, that's how life goes, isn't it? That is how life.
Yeah.
The thread shows up in hindsight very much, but
yes, you don't know why you do certain things the way you do them. And then when you look back, you think, okay, that makes sense. That tracks.
It's all connected. It's all connected.
Yes.
And so you didn't speak Bulgarian very often after you left home. Is that true?
No. No.
Okay.
When I left Bulgaria and when I went to Germany, I knew that there was no going back for me. It was a door and it was an opportunity that I took, and I tried to fit in as best as I could. And I did. But for me, a part of fitting in was also disconnecting. I had some Bulgarian girlfriends, 2, 3 Bulgarian girlfriends, and that was it. I wasn't a part of any community. I wasn't a part of any cultural events that were going on. I was avoiding them on purpose. And it became a habit throughout the years and I would go home every year to visit my very small family. But I never entertained the idea of going back, or no matter how hard it was, because it's at some point you end up being a foreigner everywhere. You're never quiet at home anywhere. But I felt truly integrated in Germany where I was. I had my studies, then I had my jobs, and I had my life, and I felt out of place when I went back home.
You've just described our entire proposition, by the way. House of Peregrine. Peregrines exist on every continent of the world, but the word means
Yes.
outsider. So
Yes.
you've just described. Something else striking that I've noticed throughout our conversation is you describe doors and windows. And a door is something you walk through, a window is something that gives you insight. And
Yeah.
that's a beautiful notion that you've noticed that there were windows into different worlds and then doors that you walked through.
Yeah. I'm a very visual person, and visualization really helps me with internalizing things for myself and connecting to myself, because I had a very long time when I first went to Germany when I was perhaps hiding, as much as language gave me windows to see what else is out there, it also gave me a refuge of sorts, if you will. It helped me hide and look for something else, but I was very much disconnected from myself. And yeah, it's just my mind conjures up visuals to help me understand all those things and connect back to myself and my own experience.
Yeah, that's amazing. I just wanted to call it out because I think your story has weaved you weave windows and doors in. So you walked through the door to Germany, never to come back. It wasn't a two-way door, and you knew that. And that's really hard. It's like a movie when everyone thinks, "Oh, she'll come back," and you're like, in your heart, "I'm never coming back." And you're breaking everyone's heart, including your own, but you have to go where you need to go.
Yeah. At the time it was an escape as well. And I didn't really realize that I was breaking my own heart. I was a big mix of anxious because I was excited, but also very scared because I was alone. I was truly alone. I very quickly understood that the help that I thought I might have in Germany, I didn't really have, wasn't really there. So it was really interesting, a really interesting experience, let's
Yeah.
say.
Well, it's a different experience, and I say this very carefully, but it's almost like even if you weren't, and maybe you were as well, even if you weren't escaping war, you become in a way a refugee when you're going somewhere to escape. And again, I use that word very, very carefully in a different layer of the human experience. And so maybe you were also fleeing away from some sort of physical war, but there can be other wars that make you in more of that bodily experience of a refugee, maybe,
Yeah.
and that's kind of what you're living in, and I think that can be at any point in this journey of living in different countries. But does that feel accurate to you that you were experiencing it more as a escaping something, and so that gives you this more survival bend to what you're experiencing?
It was a mix. It was truly a mix, and I've never thought about it this way, but you make a very, very good point, because I was a refugee, and it's a completely different connotation than, as you said, using it very carefully. It was in an emotional aspect, but and this was the part that I was scared, and again, mixed feelings. I was excited to
Yeah,
go,
it
but
can be
also
both.
yes, yes, because I didn't know where I was going and what's going to happen and how it's all going to pan out. But also I was excited because I really wanted to learn new ways of doing life and see what else is out there. And I think it's such a waste sometimes when, and I say this respectfully, I don't want to be misunderstood, but there are people who go somewhere and then they live in their own kind of bubble without making connections to the world that surrounds them. And I think this is so sad because there is so much out there that you can learn from, that you can benefit from.
And
And
benefit.
yeah, and it's
Benefit from.
scary.
Yep.
Yes. But it's can be so enriching and contribute to a person's growth.
Yep. And so it's so true. And contributing and letting the place affect you is such a rich and important journey. It's also very vulnerable and all the fun things, but You're right. There's so many ways to approach living in a different country. And it is indeed sad, but also extractive for the place you're moving if you're not also giving of yourself and experiencing where you live. And so that I totally agree. And again, not to say it's wrong or bad or everyone should, it's
Absolutely.
just it is a shame. I would agree with it's being a shame. And so what I want to make sure we get to in this last little bit is, what was the experience like? Do your children speak Bulgarian?
Yes.
They do. So tell me about that, and then what can go wrong, or like you said, people wake up one day and your kids cannot communicate in a language and that wasn't your intention. Tell
Yeah.
me about that.
Well, let's start with this. It happens very often that people think it might be confusing when the children are exposed to too many languages. Let's say if one parent speaks one language, the other parent speaks another, then they live in a country where a third language is spoken and they are willing to sacrifice a home language in favor of the societal communal language. But speaking a language to your child that you can express yourself in emotionally and build a bond with your child through this language is the absolute most important thing. Because sometimes people say, I want my child to speak a specific language. It's not my native language. I can't really express myself in this language, but we're going to make it work.
Yeah, so
And
what they do effectively is they take on that language themselves, they learn it well enough, and they make that their home language. Is that what you're saying?
yeah, and this is absolutely possible. This is absolutely possible, but you need to make sure that the language that you use to speak in to your child is a language that you can build a bond through with your child. And very often this is the language that you grew up with, that is your native language.
Yeah. Because it's really hard. It's really easy to, no, it's not easy to speak a language, but you can speak a language and then not be able to express your feelings in that language.
Absolutely.
And that's very
Absolutely.
important, that you are able to express your feelings authentically in the language you speak to
Absolutely.
your children in. And that is
Absolutely.
such an important distinction, because we know that family connections are not just logistics.
No, and because you talked about the trauma of moving, and this is something that also anchors your child when you move locations often. This is something that your child always comes back to. This is one constant that doesn't change. You have the language that you use with your child, the language that you've been using since they were born, the language that you build an emotional connection with your child. And this is a constant that they can keep coming back to, even if even when they start responding in a different language to you. You're the constant. You adapt, you adjust as they grow, but you have this one constant that they keep coming back to, even if they say, you're annoying or you're embarrassing or whatever. It doesn't matter.
I have this, you're bringing me something that I hadn't thought. This is an aspect I hadn't thought of in my own journey, which is my kids. I would say, after a few years, I started bringing my Dutch learning to them and like trying to speak Dutch. And they would be like, Mama, you're so bad at this. They're little still, right? They're like 5 or 6. Mama, you're so bad at this. You should just speak English. And they got really uncomfortable whenever I would speak Dutch. And I always thought it was just because I was doing it poorly and they were embarrassed, which could be one thing. But you're bringing something else, which is what they might have been afraid, that I would stop speaking English to them like everyone else at school. And so that's something I had never thought of before, is that maybe I was taking their safety away by trying to learn the language that everyone's speaking. And they were still pretty little, right? So there were 3 at this point, like 3, 5, and 6 or 7. And so,
And especially if you said that they struggled with Dutch in the beginning and it was something that they weren't particularly enjoying.
yeah.
So
So like, not
English
you
was
too.
something that they kept coming back to you for comfort and
Yeah.
like a refuge of sort. We keep
Yeah.
coming back to that word, but
Such a good point. Okay, well, thanks for teaching me that. What else? So that's a huge deal, is that safety and relationality within the safety of your bond.
yeah, and also heritage languages and home languages are something that is a part of them. It's something that is a true part of their identity and of who they are. And it's so important to I don't want to say teach them, but show them that this part of them is also very, very important. And it's a very big part of who they are, because they don't just learn languages. The languages also shape them. The languages also shape who a child is, and they're all a part of them. And being able to live all those languages as a child, to be able to live all of them and celebrate them and make all those languages their own, whatever that means for every child. For me, this is what success looks like. This is what success looks like for me personally. And it's so important also to connect to the culture where they come from as well, because it's one thing for me to talk about, let's say, a specific custom in Bulgarian and translate it in English. It's a completely different thing when I can explain this in Bulgarian and I can use a Bulgarian text and my kids can read it. Not everybody wants their children to learn to read and write in their home language. That's okay. I didn't expect my children to want to learn to read and write, but coming back to the emotional aspect of it, because my husband comes from Canada, and when we went to Canada, my son was, you know, he was excited, and he's excited when we go anywhere. And I asked him, so do you like Canada or Bulgaria better? And I expected the answer, oh, Canada is much cooler because more this, more that, and it's just more stuff to do where we were. And he said, I like Canada better because in Bulgaria I need help reading everything. And I had never thought about this aspect. And that was my cue to say, okay, Heritage Language School, how about that? So he started mid-year. He started, but I really wanted to use this opportunity and use my cue to just give it a try and see. And now he's been in Heritage Language School for 3 years, and I cannot express how happy I am.
Mhm.
And this has also opened up a lot of wounds for me as well, because we also spoke about my own journey with reconnecting. And I was as happy as I was also very reluctant to do it out of my own selfish reasons because I was scared. I was absolutely petrified. I had certain expectations of how people would be, of how everything is going to happen, of how I would be supposed to talk to people, and I wouldn't want to. And I still had Bulgarian friends, but this is different. It's you choose single people, but this was a completely different stage. And
So is it coming home for you to
yes,
go to this language school and show up and communicate in your home language, in your
absolutely.
cultural
Yeah,
language? So not only was your son going into it, you were putting him there, this was a coming home for you to something painful and something you
absolutely.
had escaped, as you put it. I see.
Absolutely. And the beauty of it and what was really great about it, I decided to surrender, to take whatever comes my way and see how I deal with it. It wasn't easy, but it's been a fabulous way to reconnect with a lot of childhood experiences with the help of my child. And because they do language teaching, but they also do history and culture and geography and customs, and just they do a lot of, they're fabulous. And I'm getting a little bit emotional, but it's been a fabulous way to reconnect and rediscover, and rediscover through him and with his help as well, because we've made I'm shaking. We made our own memories, with through the language and through all the different experiences, our little inside jokes of, making mistakes or different things that he learns and how I experienced it and how he experiences it. And then it's a completely new memory that we make together. So this has been very healing for me.
Do I dare say that it has helped you, Mimi, come home and appreciate all the languages and things you have in yourself?
Yeah, even more so. Absolutely.
Yeah, wow. Wow. Well, I can't think of a more beautiful, beautiful story to demonstrate what you're doing with others and for others.
Yeah, for me, this is a very emotional a very emotional experience. And this is why this work goes, for me, it goes way beyond, okay, let's see what strategy to use at home to manage our languages. Not that it's not important, it's a building block of the whole thing. And for me, it's people's stories are so important because there's so much below the surface. And when you start talking to somebody and when you start peeling the layers, you discover things that sometimes they didn't even want to admit to themselves. And sometimes we laugh, other times we cry, but it's a journey for everybody. And in a way, homecoming, you said it so beautifully, because we truly discovered that the language, the linguistic aspect is just the tip of the iceberg. There's so many more layers underneath. And for me, it's so important that when I talk to somebody, I work with somebody, I am there for them emotionally as well. And not just as the multilingualism specialist who's there to throw the research at them and tell them to use this approach, and then we're done. I can't do this. I really can't do this. And for me, every story matters because people are so different. And even if two families look the same on paper, they're never the same because there's so much more below in their minds, in their hearts, in their subconscious, even
In their bodies. Yep.
in their bodies, right? Because the body remembers everything and then it starts releasing once you start talking about it.
It's a
Yeah,
journey. It's
it
a
is.
journey. And a beautiful one at that. Yeah.
Absolutely. And it never ends, right? Like you make a breakthrough, you use it as a stepping stone, and then you keep going and then you keep learning. But you have to be open and you have to be willing to do that. You have to be vulnerable, as you said before.
Yep. It's not just a language, people.
No, it's never just about the language.
But it is incredibly beautiful.
Yeah, very much so. Because it's rediscovery and rediscovering of yourself, but also learning so much new, so many new
And
things.
as you said, it's a new way of looking at the world and a new way of living, which is
Absolutely.
the real gift of learning a language and being in a different
Yeah.
culture. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
Mimi, you're so beautiful. I love talking to you. I want people to know that if they work with you, they are going to be held in the most beautiful and next level way. I want to be respectful of our time, and please tell us how people can reach out to you to work with you and your beautiful methods.
Well, people can reach me through my website, which is growingupmultilingual.com. I'm on Instagram as well, growingup_multilingual. I recently started a Substack as well, which is called Multilingual-ish. So I write about anything and everything that has to do with this journey, comfortable and very uncomfortable. But
Beautiful.
yeah.
Perfect. We'll link that all below. And I want to thank you for coming on and going so deep into the minutia and the spiritual layer and your personal story of this, because this is what I want people to not miss. This is what I want people to know they're signing up for, and also just the richness that is there and the actual reality of what a language is like living in your body and in your heart and in your soul. And that's what when people say, oh, we're just going to move abroad, this is the part they sometimes miss.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And as you
And
said, and as we
would be a
said
shame.
before, yeah, it's never just about the language. This is just the tip of the iceberg.
Yep. Thank you for coming on. Thank you for sharing your story. I loved talking to you, and I can't wait for our listeners to reach out. And yeah, we will have you on again. I have a very strong feeling to talk more.
Thank you so much for having me. It was truly a pleasure. It was excellent, amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks everyone for listening to the House of Peregrine podcast. I hope you will like, subscribe, and leave us a comment. We read every one. Please feel free to go to houseofperegrine.com and check out everything we have going on in the international community, including language learning, and please follow along for more.
Okay, that's it for today. I hope you've enjoyed our show. For the latest insights on living internationally, join us at houseofperegrine.com to find out how you can connect with our community. Let's craft our life story with intention together.